So I just want to say thank you for listening to Blue Sky Radio. And with me this time is Rhonda Snow. And Rhonda is a woman who lives in Northern Ontario. And she's very connected to these special ponies called the Ojibway ponies. And she's also a very amazing artist. And I hope that you get to view her beautiful art that's also connected to Ojibway horses. And I just wanted to say welcome to Rhonda. And if you would introduce yourself and talk a little bit about who you are so that people get an idea of also why these horses are so important to you.
Okay. Hi, Yenny. It's a pleasure to be on here today to talk about the little Ojibway horses. It's really important to me because long ago, the people from the woods and the Anishinaabe people in Minnesota and in northwestern Ontario used to live isolated in different villages. And a long time ago, the little horses were running free in the woods and foraging and surviving the cold, harsh winters without any help from the humans. And they were semi-wild. Even though they were not raised in barns and in fencing, they were born in the bush. They had this love for being around humans, and they would gravitate to humans and want to help them and get nothing back in return, but because they knew how to survive on their own. And when I was a little girl, I used to sit on the steps and just listen to loggers speak about little horses living on the islands and in the woods. And I always imagined what they looked like, and they said they were little horses, little tiny horses, and they were hard little workers. So as I grew up and got into horses, I seeked it out a little bit and found that there was little ponies that did live in the woods. And with colonization and the government and the fast pace of how vehicles suddenly came into the lives and roads were being built, they had less use for these little horses, and they were basically a nuisance. So when I found out that there wasn't any more in this area and there was a little herd left in Minnesota, I decided to look into it a little bit more and found out that the government had deemed them to be a nuisance, and missionaries, and with the influence of colonization, they were thousands of them that were destroyed until the herd dwindled down to only 4 last mares on a little island of Lac La Croix. And there was a group of men that went and rescued the 4 mares and brought them into the States again, and they thought they were Mustangs, and they bred them to a Mustang to save the breed, but later they found out that they weren't Mustangs. And that's kind of how the little herds got separated into 2 groups. One, Walter Saletta, original man who saved the last 4 mares, he kept them, and he was a logger, and he kept about 10. And then Fred Isham, who was the only Anishinaabe man that was involved in the main rescue, he took 2, and he took back the original little mare, Lillian. She was out of the 4 mares.
Oh, okay.
So there was 2 separate rescues.
Okay. Wow. And I watched you go to Minnesota. That was actually featured on one of the native reports. So if anybody is interested, it's out there. And then you brought those horses back, and I know it's been quite a journey for you since that time. And have you had a lot of support for what you have been doing?
Well, the support was more confusion at first. When I brought the original herd back from Walter Saletta's original herd back, There was a few left. I think there was around 8 of them from the loggers ranch. I brought them back into the area, and at the time I wasn't sure, but I did remember those stories when I was a child. And when I looked at breed books, they said they are thought to be off a Canadian or a Spanish Mustangs. So it was more confusion when I would say, no, they were, as long as oral history, the elders said they were always here. And I think it was more confusion, and even the many organizations, Native organizations, had no idea. So it was like breaking through a new path without any proof, and it was the elders' stories that were really resonating with me. So it was probably 10 years before that. I think it was around 10 years I did the Native report, and then after the Native report, I hooked up with KXE interview, and there was a Leech Lake man, a Native man, Larry Aiken. I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name, but he was the one who opened up the story of them being in the Birch Bark Scrolls since the 1300s. And that's when, all of a sudden, I had reserves from the area coming, and I could talk to them a little bit more and clarify with them some new discoveries. And people stopped arguing after the point that they could have possibly have been here. Mm-hmm. But that was probably a dozen years before that got uncovered. So it was an important breakthrough, and after that, there was more support, mm-hmm. with the idea that they had always been here.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that is a kind of a controversial subject somehow, that not everybody maybe is able to accept, but like you're saying about oral history, as well as fossilized bones in North America that predates the European horses coming here, as well as I know that you have mentioned to me previously something about the relation between these horses and the barb horse.
Well, the second rescue was a rescue that I went and organized, and there was a very small, very wild group of horses that weren't fenced in, and they were a lot smaller. And the original man who saved the last 4 mares was the Anishinaabe man who took the original mare, Lillian, and another one, and bred back to breed back what he believed when they were deemed not to be Spanish. Fred Isham wanted to breed for that original little horse, because he did believe that they were maybe related to the barb, mm-hmm. even though he was told they weren't Spanish. He believed that he wanted to preserve that. So he bred back that one little herd. So now with the discovery of the Birch Bark Scrolls, the original Lac La Croix pony, they call it now, that was at the logging camp, that group of horses has grown now. When I first organized that rescue, there was around maybe 60 at the time, and now they're about 200. So now they seem to be very secure, and they're a little bit bigger. And the man, Fred Isham, who took that original mare back, and only one other, he bred back. So he went back to a smaller little compact horse, and so now that's what my focus is on. And my focus is on that little horse because there's only a very few that have that breeding in them now. Mm-hmm. and they're a lot smaller. So that's what I paint the pictures of, is stories of when these little horses were the pure little horses of the big woods, and what they did for the people, and how they would come out of the bush and help the people mainly in the harsh winter months when they needed it. And so these stories that have been passed down, every one that has been shared with me, I've cherished in my heart. And I've painted a fair amount of these stories so that keeps the spirit of these horses' hard work alive still.
Mm-hmm. Do you mind sharing one of the stories with us?
Okay. Well, it's funny because I'm walking around my home right now, and it's filled with paintings. Like, they're in front of the TV. They're all over the place. And I'm looking at a painting of me with the loggers, and I painted that. But I'm also looking at Fred Isham's, how he backbred just from the original mare Lillian, and how he dedicated himself to backbreed to keep those qualities of the little horse from the woods. And I have a painting here I'm looking at where it's an island, and the little horses stayed a lot of times, or were taken to islands in the summertime, and that's where they live and survive, on the little islands. And I'm painting a picture of a island called Pony Island, and the little horses stayed on that island. And in the winter, when the ice froze over, the people of the woods would come out, native people or loggers, Métis. There's different areas that they'd find these little herds on islands or on mainland, and they would bring them back, and they would collect grasses in the fall time so that they had something to feed them, and they helped them survive the winter. So there's a story also over here that I'm looking at where Anishinaabe man on Lake of the Woods had some on an island, and a man that was a farmer who was not an Anishinaabe man wanted to get a little horse to work his fields. So he always had work horses, and he had talked to some native people, and they told him he could buy one off a man on an island. So he drove his boat with his friend to the island and met the Anishinaabe man, and had a long rope, and they hooked up the little pony, and he took it back to his farm. And his friend who traveled with him on the boat told me the story, and he said he just wished he would have had some money to buy one too. And the man who took him back to his farm, he used it for plowing in the fields, and he said he's never had a horse that would work that hard. And he worked and worked and worked in the summers, and he has never had a horse that was as hard worker as that little pony.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah, it is. So they were strong, and they didn't have to be big to be so strong. They lived and survived those winters, and it takes a real strong horse with a strong heart and mind and lots of spirit to survive those winters. So that's how the stories are possible.
Mm-hmm. We talked a little bit about before, I guess the modern world and the pace of progress, and a little bit about, I guess, the pleasure that people seek, and sometimes that people use horses for their own pleasure, and that sometimes with equestrians or other people who get involved with horses, that the relationship is not always based on respect for the horse or even interest in the horse. Do you have something to comment about the fact of how horses can need therapy too?
Well, to be able to have love, and that is the main thing that the horses would seek when they would come out of the woods, is with people, is the ones that showed love were the ones that didn't put pressure on them. They didn't put them in round pens. They didn't. It was an open gate everywhere. And those horses came for love. So with love, there was no pressure for those horses. And they were not having to be molded into a certain program or do things in a small little time frame that was set and arranged for a purpose and a goal and an outcome.
Mm-hmm.
They came out of the bush because they had something that they were seeking, and that the people of the woods felt it. And they gave them that, and the little horses continued to come and work for them, and they never had to fence them in. They gave the horse what maybe in this modern day time is therapy. They gave them a purpose, and the purpose was love, and they worked hard for that connection with the people.
Mm-hmm. How do you see the future? What do you hope for the future for these little ponies, and maybe for people as well?
Well, it's like it started almost, okay, here we go again. The purpose to bring the horses and get them out of being in danger was really important, and now the numbers have built up, and there's people are using them for equine assisted learning, and I have two. The numbers are being so it's not so scary that the horses are going to go extinct. But this little separate herd that Fred Isham had, Backbred, is just a small little group, and it feels like it's a new project that needs to be addressed, and that is what I call the Ojibway horse now. Before, when I was a Native report and talked about these Lac-Croix ponies needed help and we needed support for them, and that's come. And there was an auction that I had to do because of my family life, but I also have this tiny little group here that needs help now. Very much like the bigger group needed help at one time. So I'm painting pictures of the stories of the original little Ojibway horse that used to work hard in the woods, that wasn't fenced in, that didn't have any modern breeding in it. And that's the little herd that I'm hoping that someday we'll get that recognition of Fred Isham's hard work. And they need to be preserved instead of just throwing them out there into any sort of breeding program without recognizing his hard work. So that is my purpose now. So I thought maybe, okay, it's going to be, everything's going to be okay now, but there still is more work to be done. There needs to be understanding that the original mare Lillian was bred with another horse, and there's a small little group that have a different line in them that needs protection. So that's my next, I guess it would be, next love would be to continue to hang on to breeding that horse and keeping the qualities of the original little Lillian alive.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for all that. That's I know you've dedicated many years of your life to this, and a lot of hard work and a lot of difficulties that you've gone through, and I know you've been recognized also for your hard work. And well, thank you so much, Rhonda, for talking to us here today, and I really hope that people discover not just you, but these amazing horses, and that people give you support, and what you're doing is really important, and it's kind of a way to the past. it's a way to hang on to our roots, which are so important in this fast-moving society that we're in. We have to hold on to our roots because soon enough we'll forget where we come from.
Right.
So I just really appreciate everything that you're doing, and thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you so much. I'm hoping to have the paintings out more so people can see them and understand why Fred Isham did what he did, because these little horses from the big woods have some big stories and big teachings, and if we could just take time out and think about how important it is to preserve his hard work. The work's not done yet. It's not done. It was good with the Lakwakarai indigenous pony, but now we have the Ojibway horse of Fred Isham's that needs to be supported, and his hard work of backbreeding over 30-some years. And these little tiny horses here, there's very few of his left. So somebody needs to concentrate on that, and right now I'm doing that and painting the stories, and I appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rhonda. Talk to you soon again, okay?
Okay.
Bye, Rhonda. Bye. Thank you for listening to the interview by Blue Sky Radio with Rhonda Snow, who is doing everything to protect the original herd of Ojibway horses, backbred by Fred Isham, and it's really important work that she's doing, and also her amazing artwork that tells the stories of these Ojibway horses. If you want to support Rhonda for the upcoming winter, you can give money towards her hay fund that Cheryl Wolf is taking care of, and you can email transfer to Cheryl Wolf at CHERLY_WOLFF@hotmail.com. And any money given towards as a donation will go towards hay for the upcoming winter, and any money is really appreciated. And also, if you prefer to send checks, we will add the address in the video podcast part of this interview. So thank you so much for listening to Blue Sky Radio, that is part of Radio Waterloo. You can find Radio Waterloo online at radiowaterloo.ca. We are a non-profit organization, and Blue Sky Radio is part of Radio Waterloo, and Blue Sky focus on supporting individuals and groups that do something truly extraordinary in our society today, hence why we are right behind Rhonda Snow and her important work for the Ojibway horses. Thank you so much.